strategy,
design,
marketing,
UX,
digital.
development.
This is Agencies That Build. This show is dedicated to leaders and teams that design and deploy in the digital world. My name is Jessie, and I'm a marketer and an agency owner.
And I'm Varun. I'm not a marketer, but a coder and an agency partner.
This show is sponsored by Together We Ship.
On a mission to help agencies grow.
All right, rock on. We're here. Hi, Varun. What's up? How are you?
Very good. I'm very excited to actually go to this in-person conference today. I'm going to Boston and my first, after COVID, first in-person meetup with 50 odd people. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah.
That's I guess the big question, we'll introduce Mark here in a minute, then I'll ask you both, have you eaten at a restaurant yet? Like, that's the big thing that everyone in my world keeps asking. But an in-person 50% conference is kind of a big deal in these days. That's good luck. Are you nervous? Is that
No.
Is it it's kind of a weird thing to even ask, like, are you nervous to be in person, something that we've done for many tens of years?
No,
I won't age any of us, but well, I'm excited to talk to today's guest. How about that? How's that for a nice transition? He is a UX design practitioner, has over 20 years experience implementing a human-centered design approach to solve difficult problems, has helped to establish design practices for upstart businesses and Fortune 500 companies, including Microsoft and GE Healthcare. He's the co-founder of Fuzzy Math, Mark Baldino. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Are you nervous to go out in public?
I've
at a restaurant?
I've been practicing exposure therapy for the past month and a half. So it started on the 2-week anniversary of getting the vaccine. I had dinner with some family outside, and that felt like a big step.
There you go.
And then I was just traveling for the first time to the East Coast, to DC, where I went to school, and then down to Georgia to visit my brother. So I was on 3 airplanes. I ate in a restaurant without a mask, which was super, super weird, and not something I miss at all, being inside restaurants. But all of it has it's made me more comfortable and less anxious in my day-to-day life, which I think is what I needed, because I was in a protective bubble for 12 or 14 months.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to describe it, is this, this unconditioning, whatever. Yeah. What was the word you used a minute ago? I should have written it down.
I say exposure therapy.
Yeah.
I think that's a thing.
Well, it is now. You made it, it's a thing. So, well, that actually leads me into our beginning question is, obviously a lot of our conversation is COVID related, and interesting enough, in the conversations we have with agency owners, how does COVID affect you? Things like that. But, from our myth busting question here, what myth, what's bogus strategy, what sort of misconception would you like to clear up?
Well, I think the myth is one that I bought into at the start of going 100% virtual, was that communication and meetings were going to be strained and less productive. And I think that's just the opposite. I actually think the truth is that the meetings we've had as a team and with our clients have been more productive. And while people would have said that maybe people weren't going to participate or weren't going to communicate as much, or would just be sort of deer in the headlights while on a screen. And I want to admit that Zoom fatigue and meeting fatigue is a real thing. I don't want to discount that. But I think when people have been engaged in meetings, they've been more effective. I mean, online meetings in general are more accessible and inclusive for people who can't leave their house for any sort of reason pre-COVID, or, may have a disability and aren't able to make it out into certain venues. So I think there's this accessibility component, but then I think there's this sort of democratization of meetings that I've seen. No one wants,
not to jump in, but you're talking pre-COVID, post-COVID, and
the
other side of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other side of it is how we keep how we keep doing what's been effective during COVID, right?
Well,
So
it's the, everyone's talking about the hybrid. Like, what is the
yeah,
hybrid approach? Like, what is that? I guess maybe that's the next question. What does that mean to you? Is that something you guys, because you were fully at Fuzzy Math,
yep.
you guys were all in-house locally.
We were 100% Chicago based, everyone full-time designers, few contractors here and there, but usually outside of our core skill set in an office in Chicago. And we flipped the switch, I don't know, maybe the 13th of March, 2020, and became 100% virtual. And over the course of that year, some folks like became more virtual. They moved to other cities. And so we're actually trying to figure out what that looks like. And I'll say as a small business owner, we're from about 20 people, maybe 18 right now, how much time and energy do I devote to figuring out the hybrid workforce is something that I worry about versus how can I let other bigger companies with more resources figure it out for me? And then I have a better plan in like 3 or 4 months, because I don't necessarily need to be a trailblazer. We were super early out of the office before Chicago officially shut down. And we're going to be super late, probably back to the office. And I think we're going to use that buffer period, which is probably now until I think the fall, maybe, to figure out a little bit of a plan, but let other people trailblaze, because again, it's a resource constraint issue. But to get back to the original points, we've had some real successes in meetings and a quality of ideas and contributions from people across the board and in client meetings, whereas usually we'd have one stakeholder sort of maybe dominate a conversation in person. Like, how do we do that now that some people are going to be remote? Our clients might be all back in person. I might have some remote people. Like, that's a huge question. Like, how do you keep some of the, I don't want to say there's any benefits of COVID, but how do you keep any of the benefits of working remotely when you go into hybrid? I think is a real challenge for businesses of any shape and size.
Well, it's interesting you said that meetings have been more efficient for you, especially coming from the design consulting, design studios perspective, right? Where everything is so collaborative. You see, you visualize, in the office on the wall, you draw things, you sketch things, and then, there is so much collaboration happening. And now, if suddenly everyone is remote, working from their home, you must be using tools and everything to share your screens, and but still, do you still get the same intensity? I mean, we are dev shop as well. So for us, it was not as much as working in person because they're just doing coding. But I see from creative perspective, I think people tend to, want to stay together and work together in the same room. So what did you guys do differently that had made it more efficient? I mean, if you have some.
Yeah, no, I think the energy is a great point. It is hard to replicate the in-person dynamic when we do a lot of workshops with our clients. And so maybe the energy is a little bit different, but I think the contributions are better. So we use tools like, Miro boards. And so we're sort of taking that digital translation of what you would do traditionally with stickies on a board. But even in those meetings, I think you have to be like an A+ facilitator to make sure everybody is included. And as a designer, even when you're reading the room, you're always going to default to people who are kind of talking the most. I hate to say that, but you're trying to keep the momentum going, right? And if somebody's going to talk, you're going to kind of keep seeding those conversations. What we've done with Zoom plus Miro is we've actually moved all of our material that's like educational presentation would be a traditional deck into the Miro board. So we stay in Miro from start to finish. We do our kind of intros and we introduce an exercise in Miro. We'll do a large group discussion. We'll do breakout rooms, individual content contribution, and then do like large group discussions again. And we just use that blend of individual, small group, and large group, which is really hard to do unless you have an amazing space to do in person. And so I think those are the tricks are to give people different opportunities to dial into the meetings and share in different formats. Some people are going to be way more comfortable sharing when it's a large group, and some people are going to be more comfortable, obviously contributing individually one-on-one. I think in workshops, there's not enough like I'm going to sit here and think about a problem as myself and contribute. There's a lot of like group think, which is great. But actually, I think you get a lot of information from individual contributors in an online environment.
It's you said something interesting in there too around facilitation. It's a conversation we haven't had, but I think it's relevant to this, remote kind of hybrid, whatever we want to call the future of this business. Having facilitation skills, while important, have not been urgent in the past. And it's an interesting point to be able to facilitate kind of remote work versus to be
Yeah.
able to encourage the ability to speak.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, because you see a lot of, you think of meeting facilitation as in person or leadership events or larger conferences or things like that, again,
Yeah.
from a marketing perspective, and even clients of mine who have been meeting facilitators who needed some marketing help and how to position that. And, there's just this, it's a unique opportunity to be able to come in, and even workshops that you're getting paid to do for clients, being able to have that be successful in a remote environment and adapting to that and having those skills and be able to use this in a marketable tool. Interesting. Kind of a cool shift.
Yeah, I think I think when everybody's a box on a screen, there's a little bit more quality. And I'd encourage when people are running workshops to stop screen sharing and go back to kind of the gallery grid view, maybe the fancy Teams view where everyone's like in a chair or something like that. But and kind of try to gauge how, people's answers and how they are engaged. I think people's in-person kind of gravitas or how they carry themselves, that can really kind of shift a dynamic in a room, and you don't get as good of a sense for it when people are in a remote setting. We have an employee who's been with us for a year, and I've never met this employee. So at some point we did this competition which said, try to guess everybody's height. There was a power dynamic in height. I happen to not be a very tall person, so maybe I'm more acutely aware of it than not. But it was really interesting to have them guess, and we didn't make a big deal out of it. But I think when you're in a room, you might gravitate towards certain people, and you might want to moderate or facilitate a group in a different way. And when everyone's just a screen, you kind of treat everybody a little bit more equal. And I think that that's a real benefit. And I think our clients can feel that, and our team can feel that, whether we're doing an internal kind of meeting or we're doing a client workshop.
It's a good point. I didn't.
It's very qualitative.
Yeah.
It's just my experience, but we've done some really strategic, like work. So when I say product strategy, we're going to do primary research with their users, synthesize that, do some storytelling, personas, journey maps, and put like product or organizational roadmaps together. And that's like super strategic for the organization. We worked with a large bank in New York to help them build a roadmap for their internal employee experience, which of course really, on point given that they were in fully remote and moving to a hybrid.
Yeah.
But roadmaps are strategic pieces, and we did that all remotely. And I think our ability to dial into these remote meetings and contribute and leave them with a kind of work in progress in Miro, and then come back in a few days, like that back and forth, I think was really effective for them. And then they can take it out of whatever tool we're using and put it into PowerPoint if they need to. But I just saw those meetings be run really well, lots of great kind of contribution. And we weren't tackling simple things. We were tackling fairly complex subject matter. So I can compare it to when we were fully remote, and it just felt, they're fully in person. It felt a little bit like us versus them. We're the consultancy, and we're over here at our table, and you're the client, and you're at your table. And that's a weird dynamic that we want to shift. So how we find that blend is going to be, I think it's going to be a blend of tools, technology, but that blend in the hybrid world, I think is going to be interesting to watch. I think it's going to be more challenging, to be quite honest.
How did that impact the culture overall? Did you get some backlash? Did you, like, everybody were ready to go in all remote, or did people miss? I'm sure people miss in-person meetings, but how the transition, once that happened, once they got used to it, but now there must be some cultural shift as well, before and after. How are you coping up with that? How does that work in your firm?
I mean, I'll be honest again, I think this is why this period of transition out of fully remote into in the office is a bigger risk, I think, from a culture and company perspective, large and small, than people are realizing, right? So my biggest fear wasn't meetings going into COVID. It wasn't utilization, how well we'd be able to perform. It was cultural. What does it feel like to work for Fuzzy Math, where we have quote unquote strong culture, but we just have a kind of a strong internal bond? And the people who work at Fuzzy Math, we might not all be friends outside of the office, but we all get along really, really well. We're studious as a group. We work really hard. We keep our heads down, but we don't take it too seriously. Kind of been described as, like smart librarians or something like that. We keep our nose in the books, we keep working really, really hard. We're very pragmatic, but there's also a sense that, it's a fun place to work with interesting people. So once you flip the switch and everyone's remote, it's how do we keep that up? And so we just extended some of our, one of our kind of cultural institutions is what we call Fuzzy Math Fridays or FM Fridays. It's every third Friday. We either take a half a day or a full day, and an internal working group runs that exercise. Or we're actually doing a storytelling workshop in 2 weeks. So we're bringing in a third party just to help us tell stories better. So we kind of learn things during these FM Fridays. That's an easy one for us to extend virtually. Our holiday party was a difficult one, right? We usually gather at a restaurant. We all get together. It's the last day of the year. Another cultural institution is we close Fuzzy Math down for 2 weeks at the end of every year. It's extra, vacation for everybody. So it's always like the Friday before that, we would, kind of do our blowout holiday party. And so we did that remote, and that felt a little bit weird, right? I think for most people celebrating the holidays, they felt weird. But because we're all in the same sort of boat, so to speak, it felt okay. I have employees that are in Chicago that would like to be remote. They don't want to get on trains. I get it. I have folks who want to be in the office. We have 1 or 2 people who are working here and there, I think just to get out of their house and ever change the scenery. And I think I have some folks that are interested in staying in another city and working for Fuzzy Math. And my bent as a founder is that I value my employees, and that the company's probably better with this person remote than without that person. And we just have to find a way to make it work, because I actually think it's going to be really hard for them. Their work-life balance might be a little bit easier. They're not going to have to commute, but the fact that they're not as well physically connected, the kind of human bond, that is actually what's keeping me up at night. Not to mention the fact that there's plenty of good jobs out there, great jobs, which are remote anywhere. And that's a real, now I'm competing. I don't think I'd lose folks to Facebook and Google. We're not in the Bay Area. But there are plenty of companies globally that are looking for UX design talent. It's a highly sought after, and they're going to pay, great salaries and you can work from Fiji if you want to. Like I don't really have a way to compete with that, certainly from a location perspective. And it can be hard to compete with bigger businesses from, a compensation perspective. So that worries me. Talent retention is something we've never had to focus on, because we've had great. I think our average tenure is like 4 years at Fuzzy Math, and I'm proud of that. But it's going to be a new dynamic, and I'm worried about it. I'm just talking because I don't have an answer for it, and it kind of scares me. So I hope that's okay to share to people.
No, that was actually going to be our next question. Is like, it is a concern. It is part of the conversation with this is how do you hire? How do you consider hiring? How do you retain? These are challenges for exactly the reasons that you're laying out there. That would beg the question. You're thinking about people within the Chicago area and from a retention standpoint, but are you thinking about expanding how you would hire? Let's say you do have slots you need to fill, or either support, or there's projects that come in that are, share some of your thoughts
before
there.
you answer, I just want to call out, because or on being so transparent about the fear, because that is so true fear. Not everybody talks about it. We have spoken to so many of agencies in last few months, right? Nobody has really expressed that as concern. And I always question that, because it is a concern, because now you are competing against, the way you explained, right? Globally, all the big companies are actually going after these talents who are working remotely. So how do you keep your talent? What can you change in your company to make sure they stick with it? It's not only just the money anymore. People used to work for money. I mean, not everybody works for money anymore, right?
Sure.
So what else can you give them? What else? How can you retain them? What is the purpose for them staying with you? Things like those. But just wanted to mention that thanks for sharing.
You bet. I'm sort of honest about what I know and what I don't. If I have to sell in a UX project to a Fortune 100 company, I know all the nuts and bolts of it. I've done it all myself. I feel confident in it, and I feel really confident in my team. But the other parts of running an agency, sales and business development, marketing, human resources as a whole, that stuff is all learned. And a lot of people that run agencies of my size, 5 to 30. I think the majority of them are probably practitioner founded and led. And sometimes maybe you have a good blend between somebody who's more sales oriented and somebody's more process oriented. My fellow co-founder, Ben, we're both practitioners. So we've taken to certain parts of it and put that under our each of our wings. But things like culture just happened kind of naturally as an agency. And I think that's how it should be. And now our team owns it. And so we have a set of values that the team has established. And I think one of our ways to sort of to keep people is a real gut check on whether we're kind of living out those values with each other and with our clients. And that's not my challenge to the team. It's the team's challenge. We actually have an internal working group called Values and Vision. We don't have an internal working group called Culture because it all leads to culture, but Values and Vision is really responsible for us imbuing the values that we have as an agency with our clients and with each other, and actually paying attention to that. But there's opportunities to a remote workforce, right? Like we've started to look at some of the diversity, equity, and inclusivity and access issues in the design community and in design leadership, and do we have a role to play in that and help fix that? I think the answer is yes, and we've been working on that. The idea that I can hire somebody from another location, for a role that isn't based in Chicago, but that is able to contribute remotely, like it opens up the workforce in a number of meaningful ways that I think can move some metrics. But we just had our first discussion of if we're ready to make our next hire, is it remote or is it in person? And we just came with a simple, in the short term, our preference is Chicago. And that's kind of where we are. And I think that's reflects the nature of kind of our business. But we're open to it. And as we expand our internship program, we're bringing actually 2 interns on next week. We do every summer for 3 months. I'm excited. We have an apprentice program. I think those are areas where remote work can, we can get more access to people who need mentoring and apprenticeships or internships that are all across the country. And instead of making them come to Chicago for 6 months for an apprenticeship or 3 months for an internship, whatever the time frame might be, we can do it remotely. We should do that because it's going to provide more access to people, and that's certainly important.
So after your internship, I mean, it's interesting that you are now opening up to remote or internship, but what you're saying is after the internship, are you you're planning to keep them remote and work from wherever they want, or you want them to bring to Chicago and have them work from there as well?
Well, our internship program is not pre-hire, full-time at Fuzzy Math. We have some interns who've stayed on because we were ready to make a hire, but we're 12 years old, 18 people strong. We really only hire 1 or 2 a year. So we kind of make the promise that we're going to give you an internship for 3 months. They work on a pro bono project, but we treat it like an actual project. We're doing a mobile tool in healthcare this year, which I'm super excited about, with a company out in Seattle. And it's treated like a traditional project from start to finish. By chance, both of these interns happen to be Chicago based, but last year they weren't. And so we would have had to have a discussion if we sort of kept them on to see, and actually, I'm sorry, one intern was Chicago based and we did keep on. And so it wasn't an issue, but we'd have to kind of have that open discussion. But I don't want to make being in Chicago a filter for people that I think could benefit the most from an internship or an apprenticeship. And so if it worked out that this person was a potential hire, then we'd have to figure that out. But if I have existing employees who maybe want to work remote, I feel like I probably, as a business owner, want to be opening up to everyone. But new employees are special. They're it's different. They're generally new designers to the career. First 2 years is vital from a development perspective of their design skills and comfort level. And we have to have unique candidates that can do that remotely. So again, another challenge. It's not one that keeps me up at night, because I think if I have a strategic advantage in the market, this isn't really something I'd sell on, but my team excels at teaching and training and mentorship of each other. And so our talent development internal, even if we're making it a little bit more formal these days now with like career maps and career ladders, but it's always been fantastic. And that my team, I think if a lot of them could just mentor full time and not do client work, they probably would choose to do that. But we just try to fit it in around the client work.
There's been a few people I've chatted with recently who have been, there's a big shift, people finding new gigs as we're coming out of this. There's a huge hiring going on right now. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I've just seen it. And there's a few people from my past who have pinged me and said, hey, can I get some career advice and stuff like that? And it's interesting listening to you. One of them in particular has been working East Coast, lives West Coast. And it's like, I just want to work in a West Coast company, within the city this person is located in. And so I do, going back to kind of existing employees and catering to them from, what can we do from a retention standpoint, and having some of the fears in terms of hiring there. I do think there is a crop of people who are looking to work within the cities that they kind of reside in, because there is exactly what, is that cultural piece, is the mentoring, is the training, especially with kind of the younger folks coming out of school. I had a couple interns myself this summer, and I, like you, love to train and mentor and all of that. And it's so hard to do it remotely. Because it's like, they have 1,000 questions, and you feel bad slacking every time you have a question. It's like, I wish you could just sit in the room with me. Like, can you just come over and we can sit here and figure it out together? So it's the struggle is real, and I appreciate this conversation for that in particular. So
Yeah.
You also mentioned about the opportunities that come up with opening up the hiring and go anywhere. Does that make, so you shared your concerns and you shared your opportunities. When you think about both perspective, where do you see your company going from there, right? Like pre-COVID, you must have some plan to grow the business. Post-COVID, how has that plan changed, or if that has changed, or is there any mind shift on that at all, on the growth perspective for your agency?
I mean, I honestly have to say no, maybe isn't the sort of most interesting of answer, but it's the truth. We've built and grown the business methodically over time, and been very conservative from a financial perspective. We've kept a lot of money in the bank to just sort of ensure that we have run in the business. Generally, on average, 9 to 10 months of run in the business, meaning between the work I've sold and the money we have in the bank, we didn't sell anything else, we could run the business for 9 months. As COVID hit, we ate into that, right? Now we were fortunate to do some PPP loans, and that's been fantastic, but we ate into a little bit of our runway naturally. So it makes me concerned. And as a conservative, from a financial perspective, as a conservative person, I think, wanting to kind of keep money and continue to save, which is hard to do as a business owner, but really focus on that and make sure that we're really running the business as efficiently as possible. Because what we don't want to do is make hires too early. Maybe previously, I think I've heard a good stat is, you should have 10 to 15% of your workforce on the bench, right? Ready to take a new project. I think I've probably been around 10% traditionally. I'm much more comfortable being in the sub 5% on the bench right now, and just making sure that we're super efficient. But we've also changed kind of how we go about finding work, which has been a big shift. So if I've changed anything in my professional career over the past years, I've actually taken sales seriously. And it doesn't mean I wasn't servicing clients during sales, but it was very passive, inbound. We did lots of articles, newsletters. We did a lot of content. I think we have good case studies, but it was really somebody comes to us with a need, and we respond. And while I'm not on the phone dialing 50 people a day, my outbound connections to partners, but more directly to potential clients in areas that we've served before, is a big shift. And to be quite honest, I don't believe I can grow my business much greater in its current size without continuing to do that. You just kind of hit a limit. I mean, some people say it's in the 5 to 8. Some people have an 8 multiplier. So it's like at 8, your business is one thing. At 6, it goes through a shift. At 16, it's a little different. At 24, it's different. Some people it's 10. I just notice at certain times you sort of grow to what you can actually sell and service. And you have a number of options as a business owner. You can go add an additional line of business. So if we're a design agency, we could get into development, right? Or you can really start to do more outbound and lead generation and do what real salespeople do, which is business development. And that's our focus, because we've always tended to stay focused on user-centered design, human-centered design, UX design. We have a bit of a niche in the enterprise and B2B space as well. And I'm comfortable there. There's been plenty of times people have come to me and said, I need a full service agency. And I thought, man, that's a big client and a big name. They need the design and the strategy we can provide, but they also need a build. And I've always stayed firm with, I have a partner who can help you or a series of partners for you to select from, but I'm not going to add that. And there are many nights when I'm going to bed worried about fuzzy math that I think, man, if I had some development, recurring revenue, just some maintenance work, I don't know, 400 hours a month, that would make me feel better. But we don't, and we're very project oriented. And we help people with really big lifts, like going from a legacy architecture to full SaaS-based software as service, web-based in the cloud, right? That's a huge transformation for the customers. And they don't need that every year. They need it once for like 9 months. And then they say, thank you so much. We'll come back to you when we need something else. And it's just, that's the business I've chosen to build and grow. And so I need to go hunt for clients out there and find the right ones to bring in, as opposed to just being purely responsive. Because we've just hit a little bit of a ceiling, which I think is natural in a bunch of businesses.
What you're saying is you have always been project-based, and that is how you want to continue as well. And when you do project-based, then, yes, hunting and selling is absolutely necessary. Does that also mean that you are very, because you mentioned that you have had thoughts about starting a new line of business, are you going to, so company of your size, I mean, from when I think about our listeners, they are small, 5-10 people company. When they are at that stage, when they want to grow bigger, 15, 20, 25, they will, feel the same challenges. They will experience something similar. How should they think about growth, and how should they think about the market scenario now, after COVID or even before COVID? This usually happens with the team grows, right? You need a constant inflow of revenue and businesses, and you have restricted yourself, to very, niche segment.
Yeah.
Well, the question on that, I think that was just my random thought on what you said, but I what I'm trying to understand is, what would be your thought? What was your thought process on staying with the same service areas that you are doing now? Why did you not go into different, or if you take the route, how would you advise that?
I mean, I used fear before as an answer to a question. I think a lot of it is fear. I know we know one thing and we're good at it, and adding something else seems a little bit scary. I think it inherently creates a risk within an organization. I don't know if either of you have read "Let My People Go Surfing" by Yvon Chouinard. He's the founder of Patagonia. It's an amazing book. It's like a third his life story, a third Patagonia founding, and a third like how to run an ethical business. And there's a quote in there which is the sooner a company tries to be what it's not, the sooner it tries to have it all, the sooner it will die. It's a little extreme, right? I don't know if that's the case, but I believe that there's something there. There's a core value that we provide to our clients, and it's not around the technology. If anything, it's getting people's heads out of engineering and technology. So many companies drive just technology. We have 1,000 engineers and 2 designers, but we're successful, right? And that's great, but the product is probably awful and hard to use, and they probably don't show it on their website because they're embarrassed by it, but they're able to sell it, sell. And our reason for being is to try to transfer that. Instead of being engineering led, let's be human led. Let's instead of saying here's a great piece of technology, go figure out how to use it. Let's understand how people want to use a tool that does this, and then let's force the engineering to fix that problem. And once you're a full service vendor, you start to speak in a different language, right? You start to you want to suggest people work in React, or you think that there's a great content management system they should use. I don't begrudge anybody for doing that. So I'm not saying the only way is to stay focused. For us, it makes the most sense. I think it provides the most value to our clients. I think we can attract amazing designers that want to come work at an agency that focuses on UX and puts kind of money where its mouth is in terms of the process. A lot of UX is translated as let's update the UI. Plenty of people who are great designers who are in big organizations and all they're doing is wireframes. And I've done that professionally. It was very helpful for me. That's not what we offer my team. My UX designers do primary research, interviews, surveys, synthesis, journey maps, concepting, validation research, rapid prototyping. Like they do kind of soup to nuts. We also have visual designers that do the more refined visual design. So I can offer something unique. Once I start to offer a bunch of ancillary services, my uniqueness isn't there from my team. It also means I'm a commodity. I'm one of a million development firms out there that have, even if I didn't bolt on UX, which is what they all do, they add a UX team when they were core custom software development. Now they've built a strategy and UX team. That's fine. There's money in the space. But once I add development and add a set of services, all of a sudden my differentiation in the market is very different. Instead, I'm getting customers who don't need development and they don't have a tech problem. They have a user problem or a human problem or a design problem. And I know I can solve that. And it also clarifies who my client is. I want to go find people who have legacy software or underperforming SaaS-based platforms, and they want to move to the cloud infrastructure, which isn't us. But they want to improve the user experience, or people who've been part of a PE and merger and acquisition process, and they have 6 different products and none of them work well and none of them work together. Let's build kind of a platform as a service. Like those are 2 very clear opportunities. If I was a full service vendor, I think it'd be harder for me to clarify who an ideal user is for fuzzy math. And I think that's the benefit of focus. But I do think people have an opportunity to go broad. Maybe they do UX for everything as opposed to UX for enterprise like we focus on, or maybe they start to add SEO and content strategy because they want to be a more full service model. Their growth arc is probably different than mine, and I think that's totally fine. And they want to get bigger, and they probably want to sell the business. Sure, if somebody comes and wants to buy fuzzy math, I'll listen to the offers, but we're kind of growing to be more sustainable in terms of its long-term trajectory and longevity as a business and a place that designers can call home. And that means good clients, good team, good work. Doesn't always mean that it generally means we're not doing a lot of things that aren't in our sweet spot in terms of services we offer.
Keeping your business sustainable is an interesting point, especially when you said that it's mostly project-based. So when you're project-based, it's always hunting, it's always on the run. How do you foresee this industry, and the competition? Like you are, as you said, you're not unique. Like, well, you may have unique characteristics, but there are tons of other companies out there. How do you then differentiate yourself? Like, the challenge in hiring is one thing, but challenge in getting hired by a client is other area, especially now. Even clients are open to go out and just hire anywhere, right? Sure. So yeah. What other agency owners talk about when we speak to them is they get concerned about people or their clients going near shore, offshore, just because now they can hire people of some at a much lesser cost. So do you have that as a concern, fear, or you feel confident about everything that you do is like is very unique to yourself?
Well, I think that there's good UX firms out there. There are parts of our process that everyone does. I don't share the offshore, nearshore concern because the quality of the work is of a different nature. And I don't mean it's bad quality. There's like amazing UI designers in Eastern Europe. I've seen like really incredible work coming out of them. The process is usually a little bit different. And the output that they need is UI. If somebody comes to me and they need the output that they need is UI, the problem they're solving is UI, I could probably price that a little bit more aggressively and maybe bring it in, but it's not the type of work that's a good fit. Strategy is something I avoided saying we do as a services firm for 8 years until I realized we were providing strategic value to our clients. And I was like, oh, well, I should start calling it strategy because you know what? Everyone else is calling it strategy. We have a lot more projects now that are around like digital product strategy that sometimes don't result in UI or result in a very small UI like prototype. And I think that's an area that I think an offshore, less skilled team in the actual kind of human-centered design process would struggle with. Not to say that they couldn't do it, but they're always, because their price point's going to be honestly like a fifth of my price point from an hourly perspective, probably. The type of work that they're going to be able to crank out is going to be a bit more of a commodity, and it's going to be a bit more UI focused. And again, good quality, but there's not going to be a differentiator. And so if somebody comes to me, I mean, this is the hardest part about being a business owner. I think the hardest part about sales is you have to embrace this concept of saying no to people. I'm not the right vendor for you. Now there's two ways to do it. One is what's called a negative sell, which is I'm probably not the right firm. You kind of push them to get them to come back and be like, well, no, you seem really interesting, Mark and Fuzzy Math. Come on. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about, although it is a pretty good sales tactic. It's more about just saying flat out, I don't think you're a fit. And that can come from a personality fit. I've had, people who are really successful in their business, and they have a partner who's like, hey, we got to improve the UX. You get on a call with the two partners and me, or three fellow co-founders. And I talk about how we get people to change in organizations and embrace change, which is the biggest challenge, is getting people to change. And they start talking about the UI, and this one founder is very much like, all we need you to do is come and improve the UI, and their apprehension, it feels a little disrespectful. I tried to take things too personal, but I know that that's not going to be a good project. If I'm having trouble communicating with a client during a sales call, them understanding me and me understanding them is not going to be any different on a project. My team is going to struggle with them, and they're going to struggle with me. So maybe if it's a marquee client, big company, we want to take the work. We onboard that risk. But for a lot of projects, it's not worth it. I mean, there's always this, do we have enough work in the pipeline worry? But I think my point in saying I'm doing more new business development is I'm trying to go find good opportunities and finding them. We still get plenty of inbound, given that, if you search for UX agency, Chicago consultancies, actually across the US, we're going to be on some lists. You're going to find us. Certainly in Chicago, we pop up. There's a few other folks doing the work. So it's like, we still get plenty of inbound work that we can respond to, but that's the apples to apples, right? That's, hey, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to three other agencies. Well, what are they going to compete on? To your point, I'm probably going to look pretty darn similar. And I can't say, hey, one of my strategic advantages is that I'm really good at training people, and we're good at mentoring. Like, that only works if we're selling in an organizational design, like we're helping build a UX team. But otherwise, it's sort of like, okay, but show me what you've done. So it's 100% apples to apples. You're putting us in a grid.
Or do I like you?
Yeah, or do I like you? Which is I generally one that I want them to like me, but I'm not going to be. I don't go into sales calls wanting people to like me, because I think. It comes out naturally through the process. I don't have to figure that out. So I want to go find people that have a problem that's big enough that they're willing to pay for it. And our service is the one that the service is offering that does it, as opposed to them coming to me and saying, hey, I need this as fast as possible, highest quality. And so my question is, will you pay a premium for that? And if they say no, then I'm not in, I can't go fast. I can't go great and have no margin on this work. My business doesn't sustain itself.
It's a common problem, I think, with growth within agencies in particular, like our listening audience struggles, to say no and know how to say no and when to say no. And it's listening to you, what comes really clearly in the past couple of questions that you guys have talked through is you're looking for clients that share the same core value and quality of work. That's the ideal fit for you. And it's a hard niche, but it's a really good, strong niche, because it allows you to say, I don't know. I'm good, and it takes years to get there, but it's a growth.
It does. And those clients then become repeat clients, or they move elsewhere. Half of our work comes from inside of our network, either people we've worked for or, that have been referred to us. And that's because we've chosen the right clients. We've selected the right clients, and they're a fit for us, so we can provide great work. There's been, I'll be honest, during COVID, there were a project or two which maybe weren't a perfect fit for us, but we took, because it was like, you want to sign a contract in the spring of 2020. I'm probably going to do it if I have the team and stuff like that. And those projects don't end up becoming referable, and they end up becoming a little bit of a struggle. And we still did good work, and the clients are happy, but it's not going to grow the business. If you can get 5 big clients that are great referrals for you and a great fit for your business, just 5. They will fuel your business for 2 or 3 years. It's hard to get to that 5. but they become a force multiplier for you in the sales process. And it's only if they're a good fit, right? Now there's good names, which aren't a great fit, and those can turn into more work. With that company, we worked with, Microsoft and GE Healthcare, like great clients, great fit. Those people went elsewhere, and we just actually one of our pro bono projects, somebody I worked with at Microsoft 10 years ago, and just finished a project with another company out in Seattle. And that was the Microsoft and GE connection. They came back. I hadn't worked with them either one in 10 years and one in 7 years, but they came back and remembered us and they needed us. And so you got to kind of create this big
referral network,
movable referral network
Mhm.
just by doing really good work. It's not, the partnerships have a play, but they're hard to pull off correctly. And who wants to be spammed by somebody being like, I own a UX agency in Chicago and I'm looking for partners. Like, do you have a project for me, Mark? Because that's when I want to talk to you. And I get plenty of people saying, hey, I have a web development agency and I want to partner with Fuzzy Math. And my question to them is, do you have a project in front of you? Happy to talk about it. Otherwise, nothing's going to come of it unless we have some work. So it's really got to be the work you do on projects to build that network. And I think people sometimes build agencies and don't actually focus as much on the work itself. And we've done just the opposite. And not to say you can't scale in that way, but it's a different way of scaling a business.
Well, this was a good chat. We touched on a lot of things we haven't talked about so far through our podcast, especially some that I think a lot of us are thinking and not saying. We've said them. So, thank you for sharing a lot of that. Thank you for kind of addressing this head on and sharing some insight there. I appreciate it. I know Varun said it earlier too, but this was a good chat.
Before you leave, I think
okay.
We were chatting, Jesse and me. I think it's worth asking. I know what fuzzy means. I know what fuzzy maths means.
I didn't know what it meant, and I felt like an idiot asking.
I'm curious to know where did you come up with that? So yeah.
Yes. Fuzzy logic is a thing, and fuzzy mathematics is, I think, a component of that. And early on, we worked out of a small apartment, second floor. It's like very startup-ish, right? And we even had a client come over and ask us who lives in this unit. And we were like, no, this is our office. We had our sign up and a parent came in and wanted to know if we did tutoring. And so I think people generally think we do math related activities. So here's where the name came from. We went through in a traditional creative process way and sort of brainstormed a number of ideas and kind of workshopped it out. The reason fuzzy math stuck out is because it speaks to the duality of the work we're doing. I mean, we're working on really complicated stuff that involves human psychology, and humans are hard to figure out. They say one thing and do another. And solving for those really complicated problems is kind of fuzzy. It is that, more difficult thing to solve, but those are great problems to solve. And we look at the math side as kind of the user-centered design process or human-centered design process that we go through. So we use something very structured in our toolkit that can tackle those fuzzy, complicated human psychology problems head on. It also is two words that and might not know what they mean, but they sound familiar. And we do get a lot of people who are like, I know fuzzy math. But even early on, I was like, you couldn't know fuzzy math. We're brand new. So there's this ancillary benefit of it sounds familiar, and that just kind of works from a company name. So yeah. That's it.
Thank you for explaining, as I was too embarrassed to ask.
No worries. It's a good question. I mean, sometimes it comes up on client calls. Sometimes we actually have an index and address it. So it's a fun story. It's worked well for us over the past 12 years. I love the name and can't imagine having a business named anything else.
It's good. Well, like I said earlier, this was great. So the list of where people can find you, I've got you. You're on LinkedIn. You're on the Twitter as Fuzzy Math. fuzzymath.com, and then you also have a blog and a newsletter that I think are available to folks if they want to get in touch or kind of stay up to snuff on what's going on in your world. So
that is 100% where to find me and Fuzzy Math.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for being here. That's it, everyone. If you learned something today or laughed, tell somebody about the podcast. Thanks so much. See you next time. Thanks for listening. Find our other episodes on agencies.build.com. Plus, we're listed anywhere you find your favorite podcast.